Welcome back. Catherine opens chapter 7 with a quote from an actual elite billionaire by the name of Warren Buffett. That pretty much says it all if you keep in mind that the rich class is not so much a social class as a political and economic class of rich corporatists and their politicians in Washington. Catherine begins by pointing out that Adam Smith's economic principles aligned with and supported our most important American values. As Catherine said earlier in the book, Smith's goal was to liberate mankind from a rich, powerful, privileged, and permanent elite class, which in his day was an aristocracy. Well, Smith, along with Thomas Paine and awesome founding fathers like Jefferson and Madison, won the debate at our nation's Constitutional Convention. Problem is, with help from a rich elitist a-hole by the name of Alexander Hamilton, the rich were able to quickly regain power. True, the aristocracy went away, but in the words of a song by the rock band Kansas, the king and the queen are gone. Each piece is the same. The difference between us is a part of the game. Catherine points out that the massive increases in productivity due to industrialization and corporatization have led to a much better material quality of life for Americans. The social costs under our corporatist system have been enormous. She says, the worker became a disposable commodity rather than a respected, integral part of society. To me, the term labor market pretty much says it all. In a corporatist society, human beings are nothing but things that only have value in relation to their value to corporations. Another interesting term, human resources. In a corporatist society, people are nothing but resources like raw materials, equipment, or supplies. And if a corporation can get a resource cheaper someplace else to boost profits, the owners do not care if that resource is a man, woman, or child working in a dangerous sweatshop, or if he or she is a political prisoner in a slave labor camp. It's all about profits, not the well-being of people here or anyplace else. Profits, that's all, nothing else. Catherine explains how this happened, saying that with economic, legal, and political advantages, corporations and their owners were able to rig the playing field, moving the country further away from Adam Smith's free market ideals, which, as you'll remember, are all about we the people. You'll want to keep in mind that in this chapter, Catherine is focusing in on how corporatists have rigged our economic system. She already talked about how they rigged our legal system in the Santa Clara case, how they rigged our political system in the Citizens United and a lot of other cases. Last chapter, she talked about how they rigged the Wall Street financial system for their own benefit. Catherine points out here how corporatists, their politicians, and I would add, their propaganda whores and corporate media have essentially rigged reality when it comes to our political and economic systems. Psychology nerds call some of the tactics they use gaslighting, basically being made to think you're crazy if you don't believe what you're told to believe. The way Catherine puts it, we've become so brainwashed that any objection to their corporatist system is branded as a call for class warfare or an attack on individual liberty and free market capitalism. In other words, if you don't believe what you're supposed to believe, why, you hate America, or you're a socialist. Catherine goes on to say that whenever Americans allow themselves to believe this horse crap, they're handing over the well-being of this nation and its people to a tiny group of self-serving corporatists and politicians. Further along, she points out that the people at the top continue to rake in money, not based on merit, which would be fine, but thanks to special treatment based upon the horse crap argument that they are the people responsible for jobs and investments in America. Catherine next goes into tax policy. She starts out exposing the big old fat lie that tax cuts for the rich will be reinvested and will magically trickle down and create prosperity for all. The fact of the matter is the rich already have plenty of money that they could be investing to create jobs if they wanted to. If they're not doing that already, why would they suddenly start? If they have just a little bit more money from tax cuts falling down on top of the huge piles they already have. To me, the whole trickle-down theory is such complete and obvious horse crap, it's unbelievable that anybody would buy it. But such is the power of clever marketing by corporatists and by their sophist nerd experts on TV shows that call themselves news. I think a big part of the problem is that most Americans do productive work for a living, and they don't understand that the super rich do not get the vast majority of their income from working. The majority of their income is investment income, essentially money that rich people get to sit on their asses and collect because they're rich. The technical term for that is unearned income. The point that Catherine makes is that thanks to the system being rigged for the benefit of the rich, the tax rate on money that rich people get to sit on their asses and collect because they're rich is at the lowest rate that it's been since before the Great Depression started in 1929. Catherine does not mention this in her book, because in 2011 when she wrote this, the stock market was still recovering from the crash of 2008. But in the 10 years since she wrote this, the stock market, continuously being pumped up by the Federal Reserve, has inflated into the most ginormous stock market bubble in the history of the world. This is a big enough problem in and of itself, but because more money keeps falling on top of the piles that the rich already have, they've got a problem. What to do with all that money? They can't stuff it under the mattress, because if you stuffed, say, $10 million in bundled $100 bills under the mattress wouldn't even be touching the box springs anymore. What do they do with that money? Put it into an already hyperinflated stock market? No. The rich in America have been buying up homes in America like crazy, even buying new construction homes to the point where it has driven up the cost of building materials, like doubled, tripled the cost of some building materials. It's gotten so bad that even middle-class Americans with decent incomes are having a hard time buying a home, because when they see a home they like, they go to look at it. Rich investors have already swooped in, made cash offers, sometimes even gotten into bidding wars, paying 10-20% over asking price for homes. This is a huge problem. There's been talk about the lack of affordable housing in America for probably a couple decades. This is only going to make it worse. Something else I wanted to mention is that true nerd economists point out that any tax at all on people who do productive work for a living is, in an economics sense, regressive, meaning that it slows down the real economy because the vast majority of people have less money to spend. On the other hand, taxing money that rich people get to sit on their asses and collect because they're rich is, in an economics sense, progressive if the government spends that money on infrastructure and on public services, on everything from infant child care through mental health services to senior citizen centers, because it creates jobs and real-world spending. Of course, this is what corporatists call socialism. Of course, when corporatist politicians drive our nation's government trillions of dollars deeper into debt, providing corporate bailouts and subsidies, somehow that is not socialism. That's protecting our American economy and our nation's future. A similar thing goes for corporate taxes. A lot of people don't seem to understand that corporate taxes are taxes on money that is left over after a corporation has already invested every penny that it wanted to invest on factories, office space, materials, equipment, salaries, and everything else. Corporate taxes only reduce the amount of money that shareholders get to sit on their asses and collect in the form of dividend checks. Catherine points out that the higher that the corporate tax rate is, the more incentive there is for corporations to invest profits, because then that money becomes a tax deduction. Catherine goes on to point out that during the boom years of the Eisenhower administration in the 1950s, when our government invested massively in infrastructure, the top tax rate was 91%. That's before loopholes and deductions, of course. I would point out that the rich, as always, still got richer, just not as fast. Middle class people could go away on vacation about every year, send the kids to college, save money for retirement, all on one income. Poor people could keep the bills paid, feed the kids without going into debt, all on one income. The main point that Catherine makes here is that corporatist politicians have rigged the tax system to maximally reward rich people who sit on their asses and collect money while doing little to nothing to encourage job creation and growth in America. Catherine only just briefly mentions the, for all intents and purposes, treasonous deals that supposedly American corporations have made with China in order to boost their short-term profits. She probably couldn't have imagined when she wrote this that someday before long, supposedly American politicians and their family members would be making corrupt influence peddling deals with China. I'm not going to mention any names. If you still somehow imagine that we live in a democracy and not a corporatocracy, Catherine quotes a poll from 2010 showing that fully 85% of Americans said that protecting U.S. jobs should be a top foreign policy priority. But only 21% of the elite members of the Council on Foreign Relations agreed. Which should make it no surprise that Donald Trump won the 2016 election running on a promise to protect American jobs. How well he did speaks for itself. The point is that Americans voting for Donald Trump was completely incomprehensible, did not compute to supposedly smart, supposedly educated liberals who decided that Trump supporters must be woman-hating, racist deplorables who were pissing in the punch bowl of democracy voting for Trump. That's an actual expression that I heard coming from liberals in 2016. The point is, those liberals could not comprehend the priorities of productive working Americans. They could not comprehend that Trump supporters were not pissing in the punch bowl of democracy. They were knowingly or unknowingly pissing in the punch bowl of corporatocracy. Now, the degree to which Donald Trump's brain and the entire Trumpist movement were co-opted by, were taken over by corporatists for their own benefit, that's a matter of analysis and debate that could fill an entire video series. Getting back to Catherine's book, she gives more examples of how corporatocracy is impoverishing America, and then asks, would the real patriots who believe in the Constitution, in democracy, and in the Republic please stand up? Just a little friendly advice from old Scotty here, but in my experience, it's a whole lot easier to see over the top of the gigantic pile of horse crap we've been shoveled if you're standing up. Catherine goes on to say, as long as the real culprits can wave the flag and distract us from their subversive behavior, we lose. As long as we value ideology and partisanship over truth, we lose. The liars exist on both sides of the political aisle and throughout the world of high finance and corporate America. If you're like me, you love how this woman calls out liars for what they are. Such a badass. Next, Catherine repeats what true nerd economists have said needs to be done: restoring Adam Smith-style capitalism. The problem is not big corporations or big government. As Catherine says, the real danger lies in the union of these giants. Catherine ends off the chapter saying that if you really look at the problems confronting our nation, there is no red or blue. That's because there is no difference in what people need or want. And the only power capable of taking on this massive corrupt corporatocracy is a huge number of well-informed Americans willing to ditch the phony ideology and come together to take back our country. At this point in the book, Catherine starts focusing in on individual issues in each chapter, like corporatist corruption of healthcare in America, corporatist corruption of defense policy, corporatist corruption of education. Because this project is taking way longer than I thought it would, as projects often do. In my next video, I'm going to condense a bunch of those chapters and then also talk a little bit about something that Catherine does not mention in this book: corporatist corruption of Christianity in America. Hope you join me. If you like this video, why not click the like button? I'll put a link to the next episode over here.